Yeah, so thank you, Sarah. My name is Friesen, for those who don't know me. I will be your preacher today. I don't have a theology degree. I've got an MBA, but these are based on my own experiences being a member of this congregation. Got to wake up this thing, and there we are. Okay, so what I want to talk about today is community. And the picture is not us, by the way. I don't think any of us jumped that high. But it's, I've been part of this congregation since 1985. This is close to 40 years, like most of my life. I remember telling this to Claire, and she said, I wasn't even born then. So gotcha. But other people have been here longer. People like Edith Carpets and Ed Graham and their whole clan. Hi, Audrey. Oh, sorry, Adele. Yeah, get that right. And Rod and Marlon Morell. Now, one thing special about Rod and Marlon is if you ask any 10 people here at Kingsway, who did you talk to first when you first arrived here? And a lot of them are going to have said Rod and Marlon Morell. And it's a real gift. That's what I really appreciate about them. And over the years, there's been a lot of change. Like coming here in 1985, that happens to be the year that the Lord's Day Act was dismissed by the Supreme Court of Canada. And the Lord's Day Act was something that kept all the stores closed on Sundays. And it was decided it was not religiously open enough to enough people, and I tend to agree with that. But since then, we've developed a whole bunch of more things to do on Sunday. You know, like there's shopping, there are sports events, there are kids' sports events that you go to. And so it's become just more competition. So why do people continue to show up here at Kingsway? And for me, it's around community and getting to know people and building relationships. And so in this presentation today, I want to get an idea, we'll get an idea of what community is. We'll look at the early church and how they looked at community. And then we'll look at the idea of building community within our congregation and expanding that then community to people outside the congregation. So I wanted to find out what community is. So I went to ChatGPT, which has become the new Google as far as I'm concerned in terms of finding things out. And I asked, hey, ChatGPT, what is community? And this is what it said. Community refers to a group of people unified by geographic proximity, shared goals, and common identity, collectively navigating life's challenges and celebrations through mutual support and understanding. Now, isn't that poetic? It's beautiful. I love it. You'd almost think a computer wrote it. And that's great. And throughout most human history, people have lived in tight little communities. Hunter-gatherer communities were generally around 12 people. That's about all that the ecosystem could sustain. And these particular people here, I mean, these could be my ancestors. Somebody on the North German plain hunting woolly mammoths or whatever they ate. And there's a lot of evidence of community within these groups because what you find is skeletons that had survived horrifying injuries, you know, like skull fractures, broken ribs, broken arms, legs, all that kind of thing. But they didn't die from those injuries because they had a community to look after them. And that's what we are now here, I think. So being in community back then was essential to survival. And because being an outcast was a pretty terrible thing. And we see this in the early church, where people held their goods in common. I rather like this picture. It's the only one I could find that actually had decent female representation. Although you will note that the women are all sitting down, and each of them got a rugrat to take care of. And the men are standing behind. They're not taking care of the kids. Maybe this is somebody's idealized idea of what the first church was like. I don't know. But I particularly like the lady there with the earrings and that updo. It's must have taken her slave hours to do that updo for her. But anyway, I don't know, like the early church, they shared their goods in common. And I don't know how long that sort of kumbaya moment lasted. But through the New Testament, you can read stories about this community right across different churches dotted around the Mediterranean shore. And, St. Paul in his writings would be saying, hey, say hi to Dorcas for me, or, greetings from the church in Rome. So there was community there. And this kind of love was very unusual at the time. I mean, the Roman Empire was a very cruel place. Kindness was considered a form of weakness. And you just didn't do that. I mean, the Romans had a motto, woe to the vanquished. I don't know what it is in Latin. It probably sounds better. But, if they conquered somebody, well, they just had a very rough go. And there was very unfair distribution of the good things in life. And because basically a third of the empire were slaves. I mean, these people didn't own anything. They were actually owned. So we see an example here. This was recently dug up in Pompeii, in Rome. In Italy, and it's usually two figures there. And the archaeologists figured the person on the right is a slave, and they can tell that because he's got very weak bones that indicated a poor diet, and he's got 2 crushed vertebrae, which means that he was carrying heavy loads. And the person next to him, you can sort of tell by looking at it, this guy's got it made. I mean, well, not anymore, but he did. He's got a bigger bones, he's got a larger chest cavity, and they figured that was a freedman. But they were found together like this, which means they're probably in the same household. So you have different people, 2 different people with vastly different life qualities. One doesn't even get enough to eat, the other probably got too much. So we see a lot of that in showing up differently in St. Paul's writings, where he talks about how slaves mingled with the congregation. Like he's got in his letters, he has admonitions to the slaves and also to the masters to how to deal with them. So contemporary accounts also indicate that there was a lot of love within congregations. That was one of the chief attractions of Christianity, actually, in the early days, was the amount of love that Christian groups showed to each other. And this is really a fulfillment of what Jesus was talking about in what's called the farewell discourse in the Gospel of John towards the end, where he said, "By this shall all people know that you are my disciples, that you love one another." And these people were acting that out in their lives. And throughout history, we see a lot of intentional communities of Christians, monasteries and convents, and you'd also see the idea of a parish church. And that was the idea back before there was a lot of vehicular transportation. A parish church was dotted all over the place so that everyone would be able to walk to at church. So a parish is a little community of a little area, and the church is in the middle of it. And a lot of churches, like the Catholic Church, is based on that. It's still today. This looks like an establishing shot from a Hallmark Christmas movie, but it's actually one of the churches in my home village of Sterling, which is about 200 k's east of here. It doesn't always look like this, but that's actually the St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church, and that's the church where my cousin Lori was married. And I went to the wedding, and it was just a very warm community kind of event. But in the big city here, in the Greater Toronto, Hamilton area, we don't see a whole lot of that. It's really easy to get lost and forgotten. And in our cliff dwelling, I've made efforts to get to know our neighbors. The people across the hall are from Gujarat, and the people down the hall are from Kerala. And so we got to know them. But in a lot of people, they don't talk to each other for days at a time. And with work from home, there's so much more isolation. This is actually the saddest title I can think of for a book, Bowling Alone. It's a classic case. It came out in 1990. And, with all disrespect to bowlers, if you have to bowl, can't you do it with other people so it's a little bit of fun? But anyway, so there's so much in this book. It talks about how that's an example of lost connections within people, within communities. And social and service clubs, they do fill part of this goal, part of this need. This is a picture from my Toronto Bicycling Club, and this was a weekend cycling trip. And I've been part of TBN for years, and there's a good deal of friendships and community that's grown up around this. If somebody has a flat tire, people will stop and help them. But, it's not like they're going to go out there if someone having trouble making their rent and to get a GoFundMe going. It's not that kind of place. But so we do see some ideas of community here. And but at Kingsway here, we've made it part of our core identity and purpose. And the mission statement, I've got to bring that in here, it says two aspects to our purpose in the road to renewal. First is inside community, changing through Jesus in community. And second is outside, is engaging like Jesus in our world. So there are two sides to this. There's inside the community, and then there's outside. So I'd like to dig into that a bit here. And so going back to what Chad had to say, shared goals and community. That's the glue that holds us together. Now, I deal with a lot of people throughout my work week that don't share those values, and maybe you're something like me in that. But here it's different. I mean, this is from the Christmas pageant in 2018. And I always like those Christmas pageants on Christmas Eve because it's a really warm coming together. And that's really good to have. This is actually from 2018, and if you look in the upper left there at the pulpit, that's Ada Gregory, a much younger Ada Gregory. But so she's there. The best example I can think of is something that Marjorie and I received. In 2014, she had some serious medical issues where she had to get from our home in Mississauga to a hospital in downtown Toronto, Princess Margaret Hospital, for I think it was about 6 or 8 weeks of every weekday she had to get down there. Now, I've got my own business, and that was our sole source of income at the time, so we really needed help on that, and the church came through. And this is, sorry, I still remember this. It was really big because Julie McCoy was on staff at the time, and she organized it. You know, you're taking her Monday, you're taking her Tuesday, you're taking her Wednesday. And for like 8 weeks, people kept showing up at the end of our driveway and taking Marjorie downtown and bringing her back. It's been 10 years. Like I remember Clive Anderson did some of this, Michael Young, Laura Williams, Rob and Buffy McGregor. There are probably other people in there. But it was such a relief to me, and to some extent to Marjorie, to know that she was being cared for by people who actually cared about her. And that was a really big example. And we do see that here now. This doesn't happen by itself, though. Like Julie had to make that happen. And so I really love the way people here do take charge of doing things. And Jerry mentioned the need to have people who would be part of the facilities group. And yeah, we do need that kind of thing. So I was part of the hospitality team, I guess I still am, aka the coffee ladies, for a lot of time. In fact, I was the chief coffee lady for 2 years. And for 2 years, I was the co-chief coffee lady with Donna Quigley. Now, Donna, she's a real lady. Nobody ever called me a lady. But I really like the way that's worked out. And Claire put that together with her ministry. Well, I call it a ministry fair a couple of months ago, finding opportunities to join. And yeah, we need a number of different skill sets. And that's what people here do at the church. And one of the great gifts of COVID, like it or not, was the idea of video, like the idea a meeting doesn't have to be in person. And for example, here's the Social Justice Seekers. We're a group that Todd Thomas has started back about, 4 years ago we've been meeting, and we never met in person. It's always been, oh, that's what you look like. You're shorter than I thought. Then, you just meet people on Zoom. And so we've discussed a bunch of different things. We've gone through and studied racism and First Nations issues and homelessness and climate change, and now we're doing fast fashion. And we're also the people nagging at you to bring your reusable cup when you go for coffee. So we do other things as well, like we've been doing sort of helping organize the food drive and things like that. I'm part of a couple of handheld labyrinths group. Like I didn't really know too much about it, but I remember being in Chartres Cathedral in France, and there's the labyrinth, and it's quite famous. It's it's the labyrinth, but this is a thing about this big. It's sort of carved, CNC type carving of wood, about midway between an LP and a 45, if you remember what that is, and. So it's a time of meditation. Shauna Young organizes these most Saturday mornings. And there's a candle there. That's part of sort of a time set apart, as Shauna says in her usual gentle voice. And it's a real time of fellowship. And that's people who don't even, a lot of them don't even attend Kingsway. Some are all over the U.S. and they join us for that group. And our Wednesday night group, we used to meet in person, and now we found it so much easier just to do it on Zoom. Don't have to go out on January nights anymore. So that's kind of cool, actually. And it's the same thing, you know. It's, well, not quite, but mostly it's the same thing. So the other aspect to reaching outside into the wider community, I think that the definitive story that Jesus gives here is the Good Samaritan. And I think that in Jerry Rodman's sermon a few weeks ago, she talked about how Jews and Samaritans didn't really like each other, kind of like dogs and cats. Well, you didn't use that term, that's me, but it works. And so when Jesus brings a Samaritan into play, a starring role in this story, he's making a statement, because Samaritans are people they did not like at all. And the idea is to reach outside your community, out, further than you really want to go. So in unpacking the story just a little bit, if you see an issue like that, how you deal with it? Well, you first of all have to notice that you can notice the problem, and then figure out a way to help. And then it's also important to know when you hand the problem off to somebody else, or when you shouldn't do any further or whatever. So the Samaritan did that. He was trucking along, and he sees somebody who's been mugged at the side of the road, and he stopped at some risk to himself because the robbers might have been around. And the road from Jerusalem to Jericho, where this happened, supposedly was a very dangerous road, apparently. And so the Samaritan stopped, and he had he had some oil, he had some wine, he had a donkey, so he could take care of that. But then he took it to the innkeeper, and he knew when to hand that problem off. And sometimes I think we need to remember that as well. Now, the best example I can think of this in reaching out was when our church sponsored a family of refugees from Syria. And now this looks like an ordinary living room, but there's a story to it. Because in about 2015, the federal government had a plan for sponsoring, so congregations and other families and other groups could sponsor a family of refugees from the fighting in Syria. And so I think it was mostly Ken Crowfoot who sort of started this thing, who sort of said, hey, let's do this. So we pulled together a team, and there were a team of us doing this, and we had to raise $40,000, and somebody afterwards said that was the fastest $40K we've ever raised in this church, because that was what we had to pull together to support this thing. So because the commitment is you had to be able to commit to these people for a year, which is not just covering their rent and other expenses, but helping them, being there for them, supporting them. And so we pulled together a group of people to do that. And as I recall it, there were two kinds of families. There was ordinary families, and there were surprise families. Ordinary family or regular family was just, two parents to a couple kids. There's nothing really problematic about them. But the surprise family could be absolutely anything. It could be some people with severe PTSD. It could be someone who's been severely injured in the fighting, maybe with a leg blown off by a landmine, something like that. And we said that, we're a large church here. We've got a lot of skill sets. We've got doctors, we've got physiotherapists, we've got nurses, we've got social workers, we've got people who can help with this. So let's get a surprise family. And we did. And what happened was the surprise was a baby who had a heart defect, a very serious heart defect that would have killed him. And so we took him down to sick kids, and they looked at him and they said, yeah, we can do it. That's kind of what we do. And they did. And so we supported these people. People, Ramon Matthews has been central to this, making this happen, and other people within the congregation as well. And it was really a good thing to do. It was reaching outside our community. And I think that was one of the best things we've done. We rented them an apartment, we furnished it, we gave them bedding. So this is what they saw when they walked into their first apartment in Toronto. And I mean, I helped with the English tutoring, and we eventually had to hand some of the problem off. You know, the family started to be, they were more able to stand on their own feet, for one. But also we needed to get an Arabic interpreter because we didn't have anybody in our congregation who speaks Arabic. So they've been on their own now for 5 years now, something like that. But this is an example. We saw the need and we responded to it. We saw that we had the essentials to make it happen, and we saw what we needed to add to that. In other words, having someone who could do the Arabic interpretation. And sometimes Kingsway is the start of something that happens on the other side of the world. For the last 6-8 years, I've been involved in what's called community education services. And we're a group that provides scholarships to families in poverty in Kenya. High school is not free there. And a lot of poor families can't afford it. So the kids in those families are kind of stuck. They can't progress in their lives. They're stuck with a life of manual labor or small trading, as they call it, hustling. That's the Kenyan term. And so Michael and a friend of his from Kenya decided to do something about it. So it was co-founded by Michael Frederickson, who's a former worship leader here at Kingsway. He's probably on the live stream. Hi, Michael. And several people here have been involved. Bernard Simon and Ken Fraze have been involved in this. And now we have on board, we have Mark Fonseca and Eller Myers, who some of you would remember. And so we've got our areas of expertise. And we've also know when to rely on the people in Kenya to make decisions on how to implement the idea. So this is an example. This is my friend Melvin Wafula, who CES helped through high school and through university. I've been to Melvin's home. It's a very poor family, and she would not have been able to. She would have. She's a resourceful person. But she certainly helped her, that we were able to help her focus on her studies, not have to worry about money, and get her university degree. And based on having a university degree, she was able to get a job as a sales executive with a telecom company. And so she's well on her way to a career, and she's helping out her younger siblings and helping with their tuition and other issues. And I think she's considered the wealthy kid who made it, so everybody in her family is tapping into her, which is a little bit stressful. But anyway, I think other things we deal with here, like over the years, we've helped with a settlement house called Matthew House. And we've had volunteers from here. I mean, I was a volunteer at Matthew House for about 10 years, going down there and mostly teaching how do people get around the transit system. And I think it's a really good thing we do. We also provide solid funding to them on a regular basis. That helps them meet their budget. And we've supported other groups like the Out of the Cold program. And one thing I really like what we do here, and this is the children's ministry that Jane Barber has made happen. Because it never would have occurred to me as a non-parent that parents need a place to stash their kids during PD days. And, you know, I remember sort of wondering a little bit, you know, is this going to be a problem? But then Jane saw that and she saw a solution. Hey, we can have a PD day camp. Like that's brilliant. I love it. Like I say, I've never thought about it myself. So that's something that Kingsway does. And even the summer camp, I mean, I think that's the only camp that some of these kids actually get to, which is a really special thing to do. So that's about all I really wanted to say here. So to sum up, 3 points. One is to look to the early church for guidance and also sometimes to know what not to do in terms of building a congregation and building a church. Look for ways to build ourselves from within and how we can meet each other's needs. But you don't stay there. You move out and you help other people as well. So that's all I've got to say. I'm going to say a brief prayer. Dear God, thank you for Kingsway, for what it's meant to me over the years and all of us who have our lives here and have built our friendships here. And this is a source of, community. And I'm really glad of that. Thank you. Amen.